Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 8th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Chatham Select Board. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 28, 2025 signing of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20 until June 30th, 2027, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, Xfinity Channel 1072, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. The first order of business is to establish a quorum. Ms. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Dykens.
Present.
Mr. Matters.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
And the chair is present. We'll take initially up the approval of the minutes of the June 10th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Sorry.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any corrections? The chair has a couple. Okay, so I'll go first, I guess. On page 14, I would like to add a sentence to reflect something that did occur and that we had consensus around. Right at the end of the long discussion of item E, where it says the board took no action at this time. Just ahead of that, I would like to add this sentence. It was the consensus of the board that board member Metters would work with the executive assistant to draft revised language to be presented to the board for consideration at a future meeting. I'll read that again. This has to do with the policy for participation, Corey. It was the consensus of the board that board member Metters would work with the executive assistant to draft revised language to be presented to the board for consideration at a future meeting. Next, on pages 16 and 17, the vote at the bottom, the script should be bolded. It's just regular type. That's all. Any other?
I have one.
Jeff.
Bear with me. Back to page 14.
Yes.
And the third paragraph down. It's kind of a nit, but we need it. The board discussed drafting a public comment policy that indicated that public comment was at the chair's discretion. I would insert that a time limit would be imposed for each speaker instead of at time limit. So that a time limit would be imposed for each speaker.
Okay, I see that.
Insert that a rather than at time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other
That's it.
corrections? Okay, we'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so those minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is public announcements and agenda item requests. The chair has two. First, and maybe others are going to join in this, I want to congratulate and thank those who were responsible for the Independence Day parade that we all enjoyed last week, particularly the committee chaired by Mr. Steve DeBoer and others, and Chief Anderson, the staff, the force of the police department and the fire department, the CERT folks, all the volunteers and those who participated. It was a great parade, and of course the Chatham Band had their, I guess it was their second, but it was their 4th of July weekend concert, and I want to commend them for their continued efforts to provide great entertainment for the town. Secondly, on the business agenda, which I'll discuss momentarily, on item 5G, which deals with irrigation fines and irrigation rates, I am going to allow contemporaneous public comment. With that, and I will call on other board members. Shereen, you were first.
Yeah, first off, I was wondering if there was any estimate on the crowd for the parade.
Exactly 35,000.
What did you
Yes,
say?
The
I heard
select board
3501.
had a consensus. I mean, we had
I
we had our
spoke with one of
opinions.
the police officers who will go nameless, and he thought it would be close to 40,000.
All right,
That was
see,
before
yeah.
the parade
Who
started.
did yeah, see, okay, good.
So we'll get that information from Chief Anderson if he's
I
listening.
do have some agenda.
Yes, go ahead.
items. I just was, yeah.
Mr. Chair, while Shereen is getting prepared for her agenda items, can we just also acknowledge the work and effort of DPW?
Yes.
This is the
Yeah.
first parade where they've been actively involved, and it provided for a very safe and enjoyable parade.
Great, thank you for mentioning that. Shereen?
I have a couple of agenda item requests that I wanted to bring forward. One of them is the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association did received a presentation, went to Nantucket, and then had a presentation by the Barnstable County Cooperative Extension on food waste systems. And I would really like us to take that up as a board to look at food waste systems and where we can become involved. There's a couple of regional opportunities happening, and Carrie Purcell's the technical assistant that has been working on the county, with the county extension, and she offers her expertise in sort of navigating what that would look like for a town to become involved. I'd also like to have our haulers be engaged in this as well, and just get the ball rolling on whether we can do something, because 30 to 35% of solid waste that municipals haul is actually food waste. And I think that if the county is doing something at here, Cape Cod Air Force, the base, potential for something, then we should be engaged in.
Are you looking to have a presenter, a speaker? Do you have some?
I think I think we can start with staff to know where we are, and
Okay.
I certainly would invite her to come and see what kind of
Okay.
role she can play in assisting us.
Okay.
I'll put a memo together and send it to both you and Jill.
I'll second that, because I attended the Cape and Islands Selectmen Council meeting where she gave the presentation, and I think there's an
There's a lot of feedback.
there's some potential opportunity that we should really be engaged with. Some of it is a little bit further down the road, but I wouldn't rule out bringing her in for a presentation, because there's some very innovative concepts being put forward that I think we should be preparing for. I completely support bringing the haulers in as part of that communication, but I think there could be some very good benefits that we should consider. So I'd like to jump on with Shereen on that one.
Great.
Thank you. Shereen, you had a couple
Yeah,
more.
I have a couple more. This is just a sort of an expansion of one that I have, that I actually sent to Kathy to say that I'd like to continue the conversation about. And that's on the neighborhood sewer pump station designs with a focus on landscaping. We've heard from a few members of the South Chatham community that have shown frustration around the Twinefield sewer pump station and the actual one at 137, whether we have a town-wide policy that's equitable to the designs, that landscaping and aesthetics of those systems, because they are in neighborhoods and they've somewhat industrialized some of our neighborhoods, and we should be very mindful of how that impacts.
So this is sort of an expansion of something you've already
Yeah.
requested? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And thirdly, I just, from my conversation last week, wanted to put together that we take up the stepping stones for attainable housing project. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund had created an RFP draft for the board's consideration, and I'd like to bring that up and move forward with where our next steps would be on that project.
Okay,
Okay?
thank
And
you.
that's it for me. Thank you.
Who else? Corey?
No, I also, too, want to make a comment about the Independence Day Parade. And the committee, I want to I'm beyond thankful for the volunteers of the committee, the liaisons, the volunteers that helped out, the staff that had helped out, the resources that we put together this year. There was so much that people may have picked up on, but there were so many other resources that people may have missed on. There was a lot of work and effort to put these events together. We had a fun, safe, well-attended event on Friday. So I very much appreciate all the volunteers that have stepped forward and have helped out this year, because without them, we can't pull these off, as well as we have in the past. So thank you very much for your time and service.
Anybody else on the board?
Yeah, I just echo those sentiments, Corey's sentiments. It was a great parade. The music was great, well organized, well run. It was just a blast. It was really fun. I thank the folks as well. People worked really hard, the committee and everybody associated with it. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? We don't have any staff announcements or agenda item requests.
And we just
Okay.
have one person.
And I'll throw it open to the public. Anyone in the audience with an agenda item request or an announcement? Okay, seeing none, I guess it's Steve Buckley. That's you online there? Do you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It is Steve Buckley. I just wanted to reemphasize or reinforce the idea that an agenda item that I had proposed a year ago about having a formal process for agenda items, consideration, and so forth had not been already dealt with in the last couple of weeks, that it should be written out someplace, and also allow for the public to weigh in with some ideas about how that might be, rather than just to send an email to the chair and that there needs to be some record of whatever happened to that. So maybe a tracking process. But I just wanted it to be not considered done yet. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I was going to reiterate that we have until July 10th. That's the deadline the board set for communicating back to Kathy any agenda item requests that members of the public or members of the select board have pending. And I know that you, Steve, had sent in yours, and I think this was one of them. So I will be taking a look at that after the 10th. I guess that's it. I think all the select board members have responded. So thank you, Steve. Did you have anything else? You're still highlighted there.
No. I just wanted it was related to a couple other ones about having a public engagement. It's just, I think that's an important first step, is getting people being allowed to get their foot in the door, and also being on the record as to whatever happened to so-and-so's idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with an agenda item request or public announcement? Okay, seeing none. So the next item is on the agenda is a public hearing to consider a petition from NSTAR Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy to install one handhole 20/HA57 and 100 feet plus or minus of 1-3 inches conduit at 739 Coral Road in Chatham. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to ask our clerk, Mr. Smith, to read the public hearing notice.
Town of Chatham Select Board Public Hearing Notice. The Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, in the large meeting room at the Town Hall Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, Mass., and remotely via Microsoft Teams platform to consider a petition from NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, to install one handhole 20/HA57 and 100 feet plus or minus 1 to 3 inch conduit. This construction is necessary to provide new underground service to the customer located at 739 Coral Road. The public is welcome to attend the meeting in person or participate via the link at the meeting room posted agenda.
Okay, and all interested parties.
All interested parties are encouraged to participate.
Okay. Thank you. So we have Marissa Jackson, who is from Right of Way for NSTAR, and the paperwork seems to be in order. Marissa, do you want to present this matter to us? I see you on the screen.
Certainly. Thank you. Again, Marissa Jackson with Eversource. So again, what we're proposing is we have an existing pole along Kroll Road, and that is 20/57. At the bottom of that pole, we'd like to install one handhole. And from there, approximately 100 feet of one 3-inch conduit to accommodate new underground service for our customer at 739 Kroll Road. And that being said, I'd be happy to address any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Shereen.
I just see that Rob Faley had put a request in, a letter in the back.
Do we want to call on Rob?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Rob,
know how
do you
the
wanna-
communication goes to,
Thank
want
you.
to make sure Eversource knows that, assuming they do.
Rob, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob Faley, Director of Public Works. My only concern was with the pavement restoration, that when the trench is paved back for the permanent patch, that it's just overlaid a foot in each direction beyond the trench that was cut. But no concerns with the work that was proposed.
Is that something that Eversource is okay with, Marissa?
Absolutely. Would it be possible just to have that included in the documentation? And I will address that with our contractor prior to any construction.
Okay, well, somehow that will be reflected in the documents. And I assume the DPW, will look at it after the fact? Is that what happens in these cases?
We typically do, yes, but there's a warranty period, so the final patch doesn't get performed until months later.
Okay. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Shereen, does that answer them?
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Jeff?
Just a quick question. The conduit itself goes across the road, then also down the road quite a ways, 100 feet or so. Is there, with the subject property kind of being almost across the road, so why are we taking right turns there? That's the only question I have.
Right, I'm not sure if there's a driveway obstructing, or, why they had to make that turn in particular.
You just usually, haven't seen a few of these, it goes, as straight as you possibly can. The only other comment I have is that the assessor's map, I can't read any of these numbers in the assessor's map. So when I try to match, I should say, the key to the property, I don't really know. I mean, I know which property it is because I know the work that's being done there, but I just suggest that we make the numbers bigger so we can read them. I can't read them.
That's probably an internal thing here, I don't.
Yeah, for us,
Okay.
it's for us.
Anything else from the board? Okay, Stuart?
Sure, I just had one question that certainly related to this. Mr. Faley, when we give approval, I guess, for the pavement, this job, do they have to get a pavement cut permit from you?
They have to get a trenching permit from the DPW,
Yeah, so they have to do that in addition?
yes.
And would that be the appropriate place for your paving concerns, or here? I didn't know if you would, how that worked.
It certainly can be. We like to make it so it's a public-facing document, so there are no surprises. So when Eversource is gearing up to hire a contractor, they know what the expectations are before they get the permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there any comments or questions from the public, either in person here or online? I see no one. So I'll entertain a motion, and perhaps the motion would include that there be some documentation on the matter that Mr. Faley commented on. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, I guess we're ready to vote. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have public comments on the business agenda. Let me go through the business agenda first. We have several license requests. First is a special one-day alcohol license for a benefit fashion show related to the Cape Cod Hospital Auxiliary. Second is a special one-day alcohol license for a cheese board event at Mahi Gold. Next is several requests for a Taste of Chatham 2025 Monomoy Community Services. We have an application for a new common victular license and a special one-day entertainment license. I understand the date may be changed from what was showing in the agenda for Hey Joe and Jam. Next, an update on the watershed permit planning and sewer expansion efforts. Next, consider a second read of the Chatham Sewer Assistance Grant Program Policy. We will accept public comment at that time. Next, a discussion of potential fines and rates for unmetered irrigation use of town water. And we will also accept public comment at that time. And finally, a number of appointments and reappointments to various committees and boards, which are listed in the agenda. So that is the business agenda. Are there any public comments? I see none. Okay, let's proceed. The first is consider special one-day alcohol license for a benefit fashion show on July 25, 2025, from 2 o'clock p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. at 625 Main Street, Chatham, Cape Cod Hospital Auxiliary, Chatham, Harwich Branch. So please come to the podium and tell us who you are and what this is about. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mary Ellen Lorifus, representing the Chatham Harwich branch of the Hospital Auxiliary. Usually see me with a winter coat.
Yes, we've seen you before.
We're putting on a fashion show to raise money for the hospital. At St. Christopher's is where it's going to be, in the parish hall there. And we expect to have, you probably can see on your agenda here at the very bottom where it says, explain everything about it. We hope to sell 150 tickets. I think it just said 13.
Yeah,
It
that
should be
was going to ask that.
150.
So it's 150.
150 tickets. So we'll have a fashion show, appetizers, small dessert items, and wine will be served as a part of the ticket. And the date actually is September 25th, not July, September 25th. We'll be there from 2 to 5.
Okay. Thank you for correcting that.
That's okay.
And I know the Chatham Harwich branch of the Hospital Auxiliary is very active. I know you meet very regularly. So are there any comments or questions from the board? Jeff?
Yeah, I'd like to move to grant a special one-day alcohol license for wine and malt beverages to Mary Ann Lorifus of the Cape Cod Hospital Auxiliary, Chatham Harwich Branch, for September 25th, 2025, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. at 625 Main Street, Chatham.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Yes.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck, make a lot of money.
Thank you.
Next is to consider a special one-day alcohol license for Cheese Board event on July 29, 2025, from 12 o'clock noon to 6 o'clock p.m. at 465 Main Street, Chatham, Mahi Gold. Do we have a representative from Mahi Gold?
We do.
Oh, sorry. Hi, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Please identify yourself again.
Brian and Matthew Vogel from Mahi Gold on Main Street. We have put a request in front of the board for an event on the 29th of July for a vendor trunk show event. We'd like to serve some cheese and wine at the event. It's a Tuesday afternoon. We don't expect it to be a rowdy, raucous crowd. So my only request that I don't think it's noted on here, the last time we had a special one-day license, it was the doors were to be closed and that we were to kind of make sure that everyone stayed within the boundaries and the limits, which we'll certainly do, but with it being the summer months and a Tuesday afternoon event from 12 to 6, I'd love the consideration to have our doors open, as we like to have our doors open to conduct business during the summer.
Thank you. What are we required to do?
I believe that recommendation came after one of the strolls, or one of the
Christmas
other,
stroll.
the Christmas strolls, where patrons were leaving the premises with beverages. So at the time, Shauna had recommended the doors be closed for all future special one days for this. So that is why it's written on here, and Shauna and I did discuss that today, and she wanted to make sure that it was written on here as well for your consideration, but it's
Corey?
up to you.
So we can just have a discussion on this. So your plan is to set up the bar when you're walking into the building, to the right of the checkout counter, which is in the back of the building between the two category, male-female stations.
You got it.
And would you then propose having staff stationed at each entrance as monitors, is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly, yeah. We'll still make sure that, no one's leaving the premises. We understand, the rules and regulations and we would adhere to that. We just don't expect it to be like an Oktoberfest or a stroll or that type of event.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? All right, is there a motion, and does the motion include the provision about addressing the request to keep the doors open? Is there a sentiment on the board to do that? Stuart, did you want to?
No, go ahead, go ahead, Stu, go ahead.
Well, I certainly would move that we approve the one-day alcohol license. I don't have any issue as long as there's monitors at the doors, so none of the alcohol leaves the building. I don't have any trouble with that either.
How does the rest of the board feel about that? Corey, and then Shereen?
I'm more inclined to go with an open door on this event because I do recognize this is different than the holiday stroll, different volume, different mentality of spirits and whatever. This is a little bit more calm. Not calm is probably the wrong choice, but it has a different tone to it. So as long as we condition monitors at every door, I would be more comfortable with this event.
Okay, Shereen?
I'm reluctant, but I'm okay. I think I'll go with what Corey says, but I want to make it perfectly clear that if there's another incident like there was before, that we need to really take it serious.
Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to note that it's from noontime to 6 PM. That's 6 hours of monitoring, so, I mean, it is summer, and I think you'll be busy.
Yep.
And I think you'll be busier because you're offering, wine and malt beverages, so I would strongly suggest that, Brian, you be really diligent about the monitoring, otherwise you're gonna ruin, it's not gonna ever be approved again.
Yeah, no, look, and I think we certainly respect that, understand it. I think I said this the last time I came in front of the board. I do take exception with the slap on the wrist that we did receive. I've always publicly stated that. I don't believe that we deserved it, or that it was, anything that we did wrong. But I also respect, as we did with the parade, the matter for safety for our town, and, our desire to be part of the efforts to connote safety as we did during the parade with the deflated beach balls that we handed out up and down the parade route. So we will take it very seriously, as we always do. We have a lot of staff in the summer, so we're fortunate in that regard. And we'll make sure it's, tightened.
Okay, Stuart, you were offering a motion, I think.
Yes. So I would move that we approve this one-day alcohol license on the condition that the owner provide monitors for all the doors and that no alcohol leaves the premises.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I think Mahi Gold is really a very significant business downtown, and I'm amenable to the monitoring resolution of your interest in keeping the doors open. So with that, I will call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dyken?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair says aye.
Thank you very
Good.
much.
Good luck.
Appreciate it. Good job.
Next is to consider various requests for the Taste of Chatham 2025 on July 28, 2025, from 6 o'clock p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Cross Street, Chatham, Chase Park, Monomoy Community Services. Teresa Malone, welcome.
I'm recusing myself, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Shereen.
Hello.
Teresa?
Can it barely be a year again?
Multiple times on this before, but tell us what you want to do.
Pretty much a replica of last year's. We'd like to be in Chase Park. We are, approval by the Recreation Commission was postponed a week, the meeting, so we don't anticipate a problem there, but I know we'll be pending that. Same size event, it'll be 200 guests. There will be alcohol served, food served, and live amplified music, which is a jazz quartet.
I have just a couple of questions. As you know, I think, I live in the general neighborhood, so I think I've asked this in the past.
Are the
Do you
abutters.
notify the abutters in advance? And
We usually just get a list and send a kind of a pat postcard out to everyone.
you haven't had any issues in the past with,
No, we've done it we've done that since we've been at Chase for the 2 years, so we will
Right.
certainly do that again.
and you used amplified music before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there were no issues?
No.
Okay. All right. So any questions or comments to Teresa?
Just quickly, Teresa, you like the 200, the number 200 for these?
Love it.
Yeah, okay, because 400.
Really nice crowd,
Yeah, okay.
manageable, and I think any larger would kind of ruin the effect in that, but the park is so beautiful, so
Yeah, it is.
keeping it smaller has really been, really worked out well for us.
Still tickets available?
Yes, they are still available online.
And I missed the airport. My kids went and they had a ball, just FYI.
Thank you. It's
They
turned,
loved it. They loved it. That was a great event.
thank you.
Okay, do I hear a motion? There are there are three motions here. On the second motion, there's a couple of words that are left out, and I'll read them when we get to that. But the first motion has to do with the tent permit fee.
Okay, I move to waive the tent permit fee for Monomoy Community Services for the Taste of Chatham event on July 28, 2025 at Cross Street, Chase Park, pending a positive recommendation for the use of Chase Park from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll call the roll. Mr. Dyken?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, 4-0. Next one.
Okay, I move to grant permission for alcohol on town property and to grant a special one-day alcohol license to Teresa Malone of Monomoy Community Services for all alcohol beverages on July 28, 2025, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Cross Street, Chase Park, Chatham, contingent upon a positive recommendation for the use of Chase Park from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I would just propose inserting, this would be an amendment to your motion, in the very first line, I move to grant permission for, I would like to insert the phrase, serving and consumption of alcohol.
Fine, that's fine. Yep, that's fine.
Second accepts that, too. Okay, I'll call the roll on that motion. Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, 4-0. And third, Mr. Dykens?
Yes, but I move to grant a special one-day entertainment license to Teresa Malone for amplified live music on July 28, 2025, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Cross Street, Chase Park, Chatham, contingent upon a positive recommendation for the use of Chase Park from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, 4-0.
Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much.
Have a great time. Thank you. Next is, and Sharina's coming back. Next is to consider an application for a new common victual license and a special one-day entertainment license for, what's the new date, Kathy?
July 19th.
July 19th, from 9 o'clock a.m. to 12 noon at 18 Sequoia Road, Chatham. Hey, Joe and Jam, do we have a representative? Yes, please come and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Dre Towie. I am the owner of 16 Sequoia, and which houses Hey Joe and Jam, which will be a coffee house. And the license, we make most of the things in the kitchen, our back kitchen, but the license is for the front of the house where we will be literally spreading the jam. We'll be serving anything you can spread jam on. So we need to be able to handle food in the front of the house and the little kitchen behind the coffee house bar.
Okay, the staff memo refers to an addition to, in the number of seating from 15 seats to 50 seats, and this is dependent on a sewer connection. What's the status of the sewer connection?
There's a meeting about it on July 14th, I believe.
Before the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee?
And it's going to be for 49 seats, actually, so under 50.
Okay, so that would have to be in place before you can add beyond the 15 seats. You understand that?
Sure.
Okay, then I have a question for Mr. Faley on the sewer regs itself, and I'm not looking to create any issues. I just wanted to understand them because the regs are attached. on page 8 of the regulations, non-single-family residential properties, it says that requests for an increase in sewage flow for other than single-family residential properties, which this is commercial, shall be made in writing to the Water and Sewer Commissioners that's us for determination. It goes to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. First, it'll go before them on the 14th. Such requests may be granted contingent upon determination of compliance with the rules and regulations of the sewer department, and this is the phrase, and parity with septic system flow. It's that phrase, parity with septic system flow, and I know before you ever came here, we had a lot of discussion about parity. How is that interpreted and applied in a case where an increase in the number of seating is requested?
We look at the infrastructure on the street, whether the capacity can handle the increased flow. But other than that, we rely heavily on the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee and the discussions we have in their open meeting.
Okay, and this is obviously connected to the town main on Route 28.
Correct.
Okay, so that was my question. Okay, so thank you, Rob. So back to you, is it Andrea?
It's Andrea, but
Andrea.
you can call me Dre.
Right. So there were two requests. One is the common victual license, and one is a special one-day entertainment license. You're going to have amplified music from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Are there any neighbors that potentially should be notified of this in advance? Or do you have any plans for
I
that?
have a list of the neighbors that I need to notify.
Okay.
I think it's within 300 yards.
Okay,
Yeah.
but your plan is to notify them, so?
Yeah, they're mostly commercial neighbors.
Okay.
There's a residential neighbor behind us.
Yeah. You haven't yet communicated with that person? Okay.
And I want to make sure the date on that is, it was originally July 12th, but if possible, move it to July 19th.
Yes.
So that I have this
Okay,
the sewer meeting first.
all right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Jeff?
Yeah, I've been in the facility, it's great. You've done a great job, Dre.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool inside. The live amplified music, is that gonna be inside? Or,
I'd like it to be outside on the front porch if possible.
and I'm sure from 9 to noon is actually a really good time. So the timing's perfect, I mean.
Yeah, and I think it would be most likely, it would be amplified, but very low. And I'm thinking more of like blues, jazz, not,
Yeah,
nothing crazy.
not Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
or rock.
Well, if I
You'd like that. All right.
Okay, Corey?
Just one comment, question, because, so you got a one-day entertainment license, but you are going to be pursuing an entertainment license moving forward, correct? Is that
I'd like to do it a year-round application for music inside the
Inside.
coffee house.
Okay, no, I think this would be a good dry run for the neighbors. As you know,
Sorry, I wasn't
you keep the
looking.
neighbors, you appease the neighbors, which there shouldn't be a problem. It is mostly commercial around there.
Yeah,
But I would, be a good neighbor, reach out to everyone and get off on the right foot.
yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun little shop.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion on the first one? on the
Yes, I
public-
move to approve a new common victular license to Andrea Tui of Hey Joe and Jam at 16 Sequoia Road, Chatham. It's actually West Chatham.
Is there a second?
Second.
You do have your own zip code, I know that, and
do.
post office. So it's been moved and seconded on the common victual license. I'll call the roll. Mrs. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye?
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next motion, Mr. Dykens.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve a special one-day entertainment license for live amplified music to Andrea Tui of Hey Joe and Jam at 16 Sequoia Road, West Chatham, for July 19th, 2025, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a question. Kathy, does the town notify, I know it's not a public hearing, does the town notify the abutters?
For special one-day entertainment licenses,
Or not?
no, we do not. For the public hearing, it is on the business owner to notify,
Okay.
which she has been advised, and
Okay.
that's where that 300-foot list comes into play.
I know this is not a public hearing. If there is an abutter that wants to speak, I'll entertain it. I don't see anybody, so hopefully you'll notify the abutter and things will work out okay. So we'll call the roll on this motion. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dyken?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Next is an update on the watershed permit planning and sewer expansion efforts. And I guess we're going to have, is it Mr. Berman or Mr. Faley? And then we have a consultant as well. Who wants to introduce this?
It's all
I know
three.
We did have a preliminary before the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee a while back.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So really, this is just an informational session for Jeff Gregg from GHD, who's our sewer and permitting design consultant. He's going to give an update on the watershed permit for the southern abatements, sewer expansion planning, looking at a 20-year look ahead for the completion of Phase 1, and some of the community engagement activities that have been ongoing recently.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Mr. Gregg.
Jeff Gregg from GHD. Thank you for having me tonight. I don't know.
Share your screen.
There we go. All right. So this evening, I'm going to be presenting an update on the grants that the town has received over the last 2 years, and talk about where we are and where we're going to be going. So give a little background with regards to the comprehensive planning, the implementation that has been going on, some of the new regulations that have come out with regards to natural resource, nitrogen-sensitive areas, comprehensive planning, where we've been focusing on implementation, what changes we've encountered as we've been moving forward, and then talk about outreach and some of the upcoming efforts. So as many of you may be aware, the state issued some new watershed regulations with regards to what they call natural resource nitrogen sensitive areas. And they generated a map that's here in green that shows all the places on the Cape that those regulations apply to. And this is it for zoomed in for Chatham. So you can see it basically covers almost all of Chatham. And that was the premise for a lot of the drivers of watershed permitting, and then made the availability of grant money for the town of Chatham to be able to get over the last 2 fiscal years. So in fiscal year '24, we received about $60,000, and we were using that money for Pleasant Bay Alliance support. We sit in on monthly meetings with the Pleasant Bay Alliance, who has a watershed permit that you are a party to. And then we filed the notice of intent, which was required by the state, on how you're going to get into permitting for your other watersheds, so that the regulations that are tied to that green area would not apply, which had to do with making all the communities that don't have a notice of intent with the intent to file a watershed permit have to look at rolling out innovative and alternative septic systems within those areas within a certain time period. So this allows you to basically forego that, because you have a comprehensive plan that's talking about sewering the entire town. Then we did some scoping sessions with town staff. We came up with an outline of what we thought the watershed permit plan document that has to be submitted with the watershed permit would look like. We talked about how we wanted to do some community outreach, and then we started updating the town's water use data. Unfortunately, every time that we would get these grants, you'd get the grant, even though it says a fiscal year, you'd get it with basically about 3 months to use the funds. So, but we were able to then take that and then roll it into another grant for about $130,000 to advance a lot of the analysis that we were doing, really outline the implementation plan, develop some more public outreach, do things like what we're doing tonight. We did one in South Chatham as well. And then we wanted to update that implementation plan and leading to costing, which I know is a question that keeps coming up. This is the opportunity to develop those. And as I'll say that as we're finishing up that project, we will be documenting those costs and presenting those later this fall to this board. So for most of you, you're probably familiar with the comprehensive plan. It's broken into two major phases. The first phase was intended to get to your TMDLs for nitrogen for your watersheds, and the second phase was basically to complete the sewering of the entire town.
TMDL is,
Total maximum daily load for, and in this case for nitrogen. There are TMDLs for other things, but the one that we're really talking about is nitrogen.
Right.
So if I mention TMDL, that's what it's related to. And then in 2018, the town was part of the Pleasant Bay Alliance, and the 4 communities that are part of the watershed permit that was the first in the state. So that kind of set the framework, and then they used that to develop these other regulations that came out afterwards. So in 23, they promulgated those new regulations that I talked about, and when we filed the notice of intent, we basically said, hey, we're going to file for the watershed permits for your southern embayments by 2027 to give us some time, and it actually worked out well with getting some of this grant money and hopefully getting grant money in the future if it's available in the coming years. And then every 5 years, once those grants are issued, once those permits are issued, then you will be required to update those. And so part of this exercise was also trying to align the permitting of Pleasant Bay Alliance with what you're going to have to do for your South Coast embayment. So I'll talk a bit about that afterwards. And that with the ultimate goal is the regulation set that you need to be at 75% compliance for your TMDL within 20 years or demonstrate reasonable progress. So again, map that many people are familiar with. This one in the upper left has to do with the major phases. So the areas in red are were the existing collection system prior to 2009. The areas in blue were what we had intended on looking at for phase 1 to meet TMDLs. And the areas in light blue were areas for the phase 2. Your existing sewer goes back into the 60s. And then there are certain areas that aren't shown in this map, like Chatham Bars Inn, which has its own facility. It's not tied into the municipal facility, but it has its own wastewater treatment. And Bailey's Path, which is now connected, and actually you can see here in yellow, was connected as part of the initial backbone of the sewer. So the figure in the lower right was a lot of the first phase of implementation, which we refer to as phase 1A.
could you go back to that slide? I have
Oh, yeah.
a comment on, so up in the upper right-hand corner on phase 2, it says to address fiscal fairness. That may very well have been the rationale for sewering the rest of the town back in 2009 and 10. I wasn't part of those discussions. But I think we have acknowledged here at this board that the additional reason for phase 2 is that everybody benefits from the environmental improvement that we're making by getting rid of nitrogen. So it's not just fiscal fairness. I would encourage you to think about that going forward.
Yep.
I know that it's understood.
No, but it's a good point. But yes, so the phase 2, as you said, will be addressing those things and, freshwater bodies and other things that weren't necessarily the main focus of, the original plan.
Thank you.
So what this figure outlines is where it's the sort of orangey red is pretty much what has sewer either available to it now or will have it following the current construction that's going on, down by Stage Harbor Road, down by the Harbor Master, and in the Woodcarver Knoll, Pond View neighborhoods, things like that. So this shows pretty much everything that is on or will be on sewer following those projects. But since the master plan that was developed as part of the comprehensive planning, things have, changed. It's been almost 20 years since the original sewer outline that we did for the whole town. Properties where we thought we might be able to put a pumping station have been purchased or no longer available, or maybe the floodplain changed, and so now there's other restrictions and other things that have come up. So there's been some trading back and forth on maybe not a pumping station here, but now a pumping station there, or no pumping station. The original desire was to focus on the Stage Harbor system first. And then as the towns partnered with Harwich to address some of those things, that advanced some of the work over on the west side of town. The town has, tried to move forward with obtaining easements and things like that. So all of these have kind of played into the timing of where we are and how we've progressed. So this next map is a little interactive. I apologize, some of the colors are a little faint, but, and this actually, the other apology I have is that I had to update this slide because I realized that two of the faces were missing from the one that's in your packet. So the one that will be on, available to the town and on the website will be the correct one. But phases 1G and 1H were actually left off, so I apologize for that. I noticed as I was doing my dry run again today. So again, the orange area represents what you have sewered. The numbers just are what we've identified as our sewer shed numbers. They're just ways for us to kind of track areas that would serve and potentially have a pumping station. The green lines outline show a lot of the watershed boundaries. So it's busy, but the intent is really to show you some of the progression. So as you get into phase 1F, which we're finishing design now, this is probably the hardest one to see. It's this light blue that fits in along Main Street, Route 28, and down in Cedar Street. So those were areas that we wanted to try to connect and fill in some of the gaps from the original backbone, basically sewer extensions, trying to maximize gravity. So that's the area that we're looking to go into construction next fall. So we're going to be filing with the state for funding in October. We're finishing up the design for that project, and that's where we're rolling into that piece. And then the 1F2 is an area that has been part of other, some of it's been part of design in the past, which was areas over by Commerce Park and Evans and Terrell's neighborhoods and things like that. And then also an area that's down by Barn Hill to finish off some of that area. Then the focus was going to shift to Pleasant Bay because the Pleasant Bay watershed permit is looking for, and the town is committed to addressing some of the watersheds up there. And then it would go into River Bay, so the green area. And then it jumps down over into down in the Taylor's Pond area, down in South Chatham. Then it jumps back, and we tried to kind of jump around in various different areas to kind of be tackling both watersheds as we're trying to do them within the time frames, as I'll talk about later. And then, again, back in focusing on Pleasant Bay, and then this was down by Sulphur Springs, and then Chatham Harbor, and then finishing up the areas around Stage Harbor, and then ultimately the phase 2 areas are the areas that have jumped up next. So this is just kind of a zoom in. This is preliminary mapping with regards to sewer lines and things like that, and possible pumping station locations. Those will all would be finalized or determined during design. So for right now, they're just representative at the time. But a lot of the pumping station locations may not be available anymore. So this is the Barn Hill, Katy Ford area again. And then this is the Evans and Terrell's neighborhood, Commerce Park. This is up at Route 28 and Old Commerce Road, and then the regional school for context. Then the River Bay area, up Muddy Creek. And then the Taylor's Pond, along Forest Beach and Bayview. And then this jumps back, this is Sam Ryder, this is Queen Anne, so some of the neighborhoods north of Queen Anne, and then around Goose Pond and Schoolhouse Pond. Then we're looking at, I believe this is Lover's Lake, so this would be east of Lover's Lake, and then back up into the neighborhoods by Muddy Creek. And then this is back down by Sulphur Springs, and so this is like Harding's Beach, that area. Chatham Harbor, Main Street, Shore Road, and Main Street. And then this is out basically west of Battlefield, and then south of Bridge Street. And then you start getting into the balance of the phase two. These are not in any particular order. So Tanglewood and Stagecoach, that's over on the western side of town. This is, I'm blanking. I have my little cheat sheet, which I left in my bag. So this is between Taylor's Pond and Sulphur Springs. Then this is Crow's Pond and Chatham Harbor, Pleasant Bay, and then Morris Island. So what we tried to do when we were thinking about this a few years ago, the goal was to try to line up with the Pleasant Bay Alliance permit. And we knew the permit was going to eventually change from annual reporting to 5-year reporting. So their reporting cycles would have been roughly 2023, 28, 33, 38, plus or minus, depending on whether you're picking the beginning or the end of the year. And then, so we were looking at, if we were filed in December of 27, we'd essentially line ourselves up that in 2028, 2030, 33, et cetera, those would be the 5-year reporting periods, so that you'd be issuing one document created for the whole town, so you wouldn't be creating 2 documents and 2 updates, because that's kind of where you are right now. But the Pleasant Bay Alliance, as you may be aware, proposed a new permit date and basically got a new 20-year time frame. So essentially, your permit will likely be dated 2026, because I think they just submitted in 2025 the update, and so depending on when DEP actually issues the revised permit, it'll be roughly on this time frame, so every 5 years. So what we'd look to do is for the South Coast embayments, that's what the South Coast estuaries, that's what the SCE stands for. We would just try to line up and do our reporting. We would propose that when we issue the report to the state, that we want to line up our reporting periods with Pleasant Bay Alliance, so that you don't have to do them piecemeal. It's much easier to do all your analysis as a town as opposed to in chunks. So that's the intended goal of that. And where that leads to is, well, how does that line up with your various different phases? So essentially, these are those phases that we talked about. This is the rough design and construction timeline. So looking at the last year, roughly, of when we think construction would be complete. That's not necessarily all the connections done, but that would just mean construction's complete. And how that would line up with various different, the permitting start lines. So obviously this is in the middle, so, but by the time under the new permit, by 2030, 31, you'll have addressed these 2 areas for Pleasant Bay, but they don't really apply to the Pleasant Bay watershed. But by the next reporting period in 2036, you will have addressed Pleasant Bay and Frostfish Creek and River Bay neighborhoods. And then you jump down again, and then you'd see by this time period, you'll have picked up some more of Muddy Creek and some more of Pleasant Bay, and then some of the Chatham Harbor at the end of that permit reporting period. And then we tried to line up the other ones as well, to where it really leads to where do we think we're gonna be. So so what this table is presenting is a percentage of nitrogen removal. This is preliminary because we're still working through future flows and the impacts of those on the amount of nitrogen that you have to remove, and any additional loads that might come in from redevelopment. So you have controllable loads, primarily wastewater related, but you have other loads that come from impervious surfaces and things like that. So this is just focusing on wastewater based on our analysis right now. So for phases A through E, which is pretty much what we're doing right now, you've achieved about 77% of the Oyster Pond's limit and about 95% of Taylor's Pond. And then you've essentially addressed Little Mill Pond and Mitchell River. And then by the time we get 1F1 done, you'll have also taken care of Taylor's Pond, because there's a portion of the Main Street Route 28 area that goes into that watershed. Then in terms of Pleasant Bay, you should be somewhere in the 90th percentile for Bassing Harbor and 98th percentile for Frostfish Creek. Now there's some nuances in the way that when the Pleasant Bay Alliance issued their reporting, the nitrogen removals were set with goals at 2018, but then they revised those again in 2025 to account for some growth. So there's additional load that is projected that would need to be removed. So the values fluctuate depending on what that value is and how much of that flow is actually projected future nitrogen contribution or actual growth that's happened since really they developed the TMDLs back in 2008.
Great. Jeff,
oh, yeah.
I just got a quick question.
Sure.
I want to be clear, what do those percentages represent? So it says 77% Oyster Pond, 95% Taylor's Pond, 145% Little Mill Pond. That's the watershed that's been sewered, or that's the expectation for nitrogen reduction, the success of the
So this
effort,
is
or
this
what
is
it?
this is tied to that the goal of meeting 75% of your nitrogen removal within the 20-year period of your permit.
Oh, okay.
So anything that's over 75%
Got it.
is a good thing, and anything over 100 is a very good thing. And this isn't necessarily the percentage of the watershed that's sewered, it's just the percentage of the nitrogen removal that had to be addressed. Because not all of them, so when the MEP reports were developed, they looked at each of your watersheds and they said, in some cases, you might have to remove, they projected that one way to address the TMDL would be to remove 100% of the nitrogen load associated with wastewater. But in some places, like Taylor's Pond and others, they might have said, well, you need to get between 40 and 60% of that nitrogen load from wastewater. Now, you could address it in other ways, but when the MEP developed their scenarios, septic systems were the easiest target. They produce greater than 75 to 80% of all the nitrogen load that's going into your embayment, so it's the controllable source that's really the easiest to manage. So that's why everything's sort of focused around wastewater. So this basically says that from a permit perspective, you've already achieved, through the implementation that you've been doing the last 15 years, you're hitting some of your goals for these watersheds. And part of the nice thing about this report is we'll be able to demonstrate that you will actually have met some of these goals. But you still have to manage that, because if you had growth in those areas, then that percentage could then drop because you've added more load, and everything that you add on top of it, anything new, has to basically come out, so you have to address that load. So it's a little complicated, and I know it's a very busy slide, but I was struggling with the best way to try to show this, so I figured this kind of gave you some of the timeline and some of the phases and show how you're working through each of those 2 permits. Now, this is not a permit yet, so this is just what we're developing that document for, that we're hoping to submit in 2027 or earlier, depending on when it's ready. But to show you where you are in the standing, to show that the work that you're doing is going to benefit these, your abatements and when you achieve those. There are some that struggle, like Mill Pond and Stage Harbor, and even a portion of Pleasant Bay proper, that the loads don't necessarily, the amount of load that you're maybe responsible for, or that is being projected that you're responsible for, is a hard goal to achieve. But in the grand scheme of things, what we want to demonstrate is that when we address all the loads in that go to Pleasant Bay, for all the subwatersheds that go to Pleasant Bay is getting the added benefit of that reduced load from other areas. So as the folks from the MEP group would always say is, the targets that they talked about and the percent of septic removal by subwatershed is just one way to do that. And what would happen is, as part of these reporting periods, documents will be resubmitted and models will be rerun with Pleasant Bay Alliance, and likely you'll do the same for your South Coast abatements to demonstrate that you actually are achieving those removals. And, Pleasant Bay is also getting the benefit of the other, 3 communities that are doing work to reduce nitrogen as well. So in the grand scheme of things, although you may not be hitting that percentage where you'd like to be, you may actually be still reaching that goal, the ultimate goal of achieving TMDL compliance prior to that. Because as you can see, you're getting Frostfish Creek and Lower Muddy Creek, and you're going to be addressing a lot of Chatham Harbor, which if you looked at the reports, Chatham Harbor was identified as, hey, you didn't have to remove any septic load if that was, one way to address it, because you could address it in other areas. But that water does work its way back and forth between the bay and the ocean. So, so ultimately, leading from this information, we're pulling together our report. Again, it's a draft. It's not going to be a complete report because the intent of the grant was to get us the next step. And so we held in terms of outreach, we held a meeting in May with South Chatham. We will likely be holding another one. We're doing this select board meeting. We know that we're going to be doing some neighborhood meetings for the Phase 1F2 area, because there were discussions previously about the grinder pumps, and I know a lot of that's already in discussions with the town about how they're proceeding with grinder pumps. But that's an area where we had anticipated having some pumping stations, and we may not have those pumping stations available to us. So we want to be able to talk to those neighborhoods as well about what their sewer would look like. And then Commerce Park is another area in that 1F2 area. Then we want to give a presentation in the fall to the select board to talk about the costs, because that's the piece we haven't finished yet. We wanted to get through the implementation phasing and present that, see if there were any comments, and then what we're gonna be doing is developing projected costs. Obviously, we're not gonna have exact costs, and then we're gonna project those based on the year that we think that they're gonna fall relative to this implementation schedule. So that's the intent, so that you'd have a more robust way of looking at the finance part of that. And then ultimately, when we complete the draft, we'll be submitting the draft to the board for review, comments, and receive those comments before we send anything final to DEP. What we are going to do as part of this grant project is we'd like to submit a draft of the document we have right now to DEP to get their feedback, to make sure we're going down the path they want us to. we've been trying to model Pleasant Bay Alliance, but they're not exactly the same animal. So moving forward, we talked about the meetings, we talked about the potential future grants. We're hoping that, again, we will apply and hopefully be successful again to get additional grant funding through the state. It's been, I think, a nice benefit for the town. I know you're working through the grinder pump procurement. The next phase of implementation, you know, we're working through those nitrogen loading, growth, and the watershed permit, trying to balance the needs of both those major watershed groupings. Talk about the collection system expansion as we did, and then by the end of 2027 or earlier, if the report's done, file that watershed permit for the South Coast embayments to get you on that timeline. So with that, I guess I'd open it up for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this presentation. I think it does help provide some information to townspeople who have asked questions about the progress of the sewering project, you know, what the projections are in terms of addressing the different areas of town, how long it's going to take. And I appreciate that you're going to be coming back with the financials on that, because that's an important piece. I did have a question. I know you presented to the Water and Sewer Committee a modified version of this.
Yes.
Are you going to be giving regular updates to the Water and Sewer Committee on this process going forward? Is that anticipated?
I guess it's really a question for the town staff. Right now with our grant, I mean, we were working off of the grant funding, so
Okay.
we had only budgeted a few. We had budgeted this meeting, we budgeted the public presentation for South Chatham, and
Okay.
like I said, we still have to finish the costing. We've, you know, at the request when Rob has asked me, we've come
Okay.
and presented. Usually we also do it tied to the sewer project itself and come in and present
Okay.
on that, but yes.
Yeah, I just think it's important within the grant parameters
Yep.
to keep them in the loop.
Yes.
I know recently the town manager and I presented to the Summer Residence Committee. They were interested in the progress of the sewering project, so I'm sure some of them are paying attention to this tonight. I have a question, I guess it would be to Rob. Do we, or maybe even Greg, the Board of Health, this has to do with grinder pumps, and the Select Board has adopted the policy for reimbursement. Town's going to pay for the grinder pump. The town's going to acquire the grinder pump at town expense, and the town is going to provide a $2,000 stipend to the property owner for basically to cover installation-related costs. That's the summation of it, right?
I believe there's a second reading tonight, next
Yeah.
item agenda.
I don't think that's on tonight. I think that's on the 22nd. We're going to deal with the sewer assistance tonight, but it has been adopted, right? We don't have to have another reading of it. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct. It has been adopted, and notification's been made to the Board of Health so that whatever they need to do for issuing their connection orders and so forth could be at least in the organization stage versus actually listing them.
That was going to be my question. Does the Board of Health, they imposed at our request a moratorium on the sewer connections for grinder pumps where they're needed. So they're going to have to be asked to lift that. Is that contemplated at some point soon?
Yeah, that's expected, but we would like to go out with our RFP for grinder pump procurement first, so at least we have an avenue to purchase the grinder pumps. It'll probably happen
Yeah.
in conjunction around the same time.
Yeah, well, that's a step that needs to be taken. And the other sort of administrative detail that was kind of left unresolved, I guess it was left for the staff to do, at least that's my understanding, was the retroactive payment to people that have already installed the grinder pumps and how much that was going to be. Was it going to be the flat 2,000, which probably certainly it's the easiest thing to do. Do we have any status update on that? How's that looking?
We don't. Is this like a future agenda request? Because I think it was depends on the cost that we acquire the grinder pumps. That may be an appropriate cost to reimburse people, because I think there was some discussion that they may not have itemized invoices from contractors when the grinder pumps were installed. And the question was whether do we reimburse them for what they actually paid, or do we reimburse them
Yeah, I know.
the current rate?
So do you anticipate coming before the select board with a recommendation on that?
We certainly can.
At some point when you get more information?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, I'll throw it open to the other board members with questions or comments. Jeff?
Yeah, this is very helpful to me. Especially like to see the color coding on the areas of the town that have been sewered, whether they were, the old sewer or the new efforts. And just a couple of questions. How far have we diverted from the original comprehensive, master plan? I know we took a little bit of a detour with the deal with Harwich and the western part of Chatham and the eastern part of Harwich. But have we adhered to the original thoughts of where we were going to go and which watersheds we were going to attack initially? Have we adhered to that plan? And one other comment, I noticed that, obviously, we're paying attention to Oyster Pond, Oyster River, Stage Harbor, and Pleasant Bay. Eventually, because of the good work we're doing everywhere else, it kind of flows into Pleasant Bay. But I'm worried about the freshwater ponds in Chatham. We've had some issues lately, and it seems like we get to the freshwater areas kind of late in this plan.
Is it all right if I go to one?
Yeah, no, please do, please do.
So the reality is, and one of the things I didn't focus on, but is in the presentation, this isn't replacing the comprehensive plan. So we're still going down the path of the comprehensive plan. The advantage of the plan was we knew what the backbone was going to be, and what I'm just trying to get to this map. We knew generally how we wanted to tackle it.
Yep.
And what we're doing is we're primarily focusing on dark blue areas.
Okay.
So that was that phase one. So we haven't really deviated from that. There may be some areas where we've ended up picking up a little of the light blue just because you're dealing with neighborhoods and you're in that area, and so it may have turned out, or there may have been some other driver. But the reality is most of the work that we've been doing has been up through this corridor and around, onto Stage Neck. And all of that is in that phase one sewer expansion. So if I jump to here, that's a lot of these, this area is still, all of that was all phase one areas. So from that perspective, we haven't really deviated. What we wanted to do as part of this analysis is, now it's been, the water use that we used as part of the comprehensive plan dated back to probably almost 2001 to 4. So it's been 20 years. So we wanted to look at newer water use data, see how, if what we had targeted for phase one was getting us there, or was going to get us past where we needed to be, those kinds of things. But we wanted to make sure we're still on target, and that's what we're seeing, is we're still in pretty good shape relative to that implementation. So the fact that you've jumped around hasn't deviated from the comprehensive plan. It just, in the intent originally, the reason we were targeting Stage Harbor is because that had a lot of areas that had 100, quote unquote, 100% septic load was to be removed. So that's why, back when Dr. Duncanson was working with us on this, that's where he wanted to, that's where a lot of that target was in those areas. As you start getting out towards Taylor's Pond and Mill Creek and even Sulphur Springs and Bucks Creek, the percentages drop. So there aren't as much of that. You don't have to remove 100% of the septic load. You only had to remove a smaller portion of that. So that's why the focus was, you can see more dark blue in the areas around Stage Harbor. And then as you get up into like Muddy Creek, had a lot of nitrogen removal and things like that. So that's why those areas were kind of targeted.
Okay.
Did that answer your?
Yeah, it did. Thank you. Helpful.
Any other comments or questions from the board? No. Okay. Well, thank you. There's no action on this item, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
your
much for
comment.
having me.
Thank you. The next agenda item is to consider this Chatham Sewer Assistance Grant Program Policy. This is the second read. We will accept public comments on this. So who's going to present this?
Kathy's going to present it.
Okay.
So as you stated, what you have before you is the second reading continued. You first looked at this on April 29th, 2025. At that time, there were some comments and questions. Town Council has reviewed the policy and included in the packet immediately after the staff report are the pieces that were edited by Town Council and added to address trustees living year-round at the residence, and to address also corporate entities that, again, to align it with the Cape Cod Aqua Fund program. The whole point, we wanted to keep this as closely aligned to how they're operating their program to maintain, to ensure ease of management for the grants. So that's what you have before you. After that, you have a clean version of that with Town Council's comments incorporated, if you wanted to just see how it looked without all the red and blue. But in the application also did remove apartments. It did leave residential condominiums because in speaking with Alice Ryan, she did talk about how she's the director of the Cape Cod Aqua Fund. She spoke about the different ways that towns have worked with condominiums, which is why that was left on, because if it's less than 10 condominiums in a complex, individuals can apply. But if it's more than 10, HOAs are encouraged to apply as an HOA. So that's why it was kind of left on there, because we could then maybe say, okay, we've got 10, maybe we should reach out to that HOA and say, you have 10 condo owners who are looking for this assistance. Would you like to, as an HOA, apply for anybody in need who meets the criteria?
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for putting this together. I think you did incorporate comments that we made last time. I did have a question or two, and then maybe others do as well. So I'm looking at the eligibility criteria and the language that Jay, our town council, put in, and I see Jay on the screen, so maybe he might answer this question. It says, the first bullet, be the residential property owner of record or trustee living year-round at the residence. So, first question, in order to be eligible for the program, you have to be a year-round resident.
Again, trying to mirror the Aqua Fund, yes, they require that it's year-round residents.
So does the phrase living year-round at the residence, Jay, modify just the word trustee, or is it meant to modify as well property owner of record?
I don't have it in front of me, Dean, and I wasn't aware this was coming up tonight.
No, you were here for something else. Thanks.
Right, but my guess, and Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it is intended to modify both, so that I believe year-round residency is a key under the Aqua Fund program.
Correct.
Okay. And I had so maybe you just throw a comma after the word trustee, but what if you have a situation where the trustee is like the child of an elderly parent who's the beneficiary of the trust, and the parent lives on the premises year-round? The trustee might be out of state. Is that going to qualify?
We could take that, so the Aqua Fund, they do say they work with trusts, and if an instance like that comes up, again, we would be mirroring how they operate, so I could reach out and see how they handle it, but I would assume.
That's just something, it may not require any revision here,
Yes.
but basically, we are accepting the screening that's done by the Aqua Fund.
Correct.
We heard a presentation from.
Correct.
From
Alice, yep.
recently. And proof of residency, year-round residency, well, that's the same issue, so that's going to be established by the Aqua Fund.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I personally think this is in order for adoption tonight, but I'm going to throw it open to other members of the board. Jeff?
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Chairman, that is ready for adoption this evening, and I'm sure there's going to be perhaps other comments, but I move to adopt the Chatham Sewer Assistance Grant Program policy as amended. The amendments included everything we suggested at the last time we looked at this policy, so I really appreciate it.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any from the public? And I'll point out, this is meant to Yes, please come. While you're coming up, Brian, this is meant to be applicable to anyone who is connecting to the sewer at the request of the town, at the insistence of the town, not just grinder pump people.
Yep.
Okay. Brian Phillips.
Brian Phillips, 374 Orleans Road. I guess my first question is how much is the grant for?
Kathy, do you want to?
Sure. So the grant, there are two different amounts, and again, based on what the Aqua Fund awards, there's a 0% interest loan, and if you qualify for the 0% interest loan with the Aqua Fund, you would receive $2,000 from the town of Chatham if you apply for the additional grant money. If you qualify for the 2% Aqua Fund loan, you would receive $1,500 if you also apply to the Chatham Sewer Assistance Program.
And then what is the criteria to qualify for these loans?
For the most part, pre-approval with the Cape Cod Aqua Fund is kind of the primary driver for approval. There is an application, you know, it is outlined in the policy.
It's need-based with them.
It is need-based. With the 0% is, there is a threshold for income of less than $100,000, I believe is what Ms. Ryan said. I'd have to review the minutes from her presentation, but there is a threshold of income that they use to determine the percentage that's awarded. But she assured in the presentation she gave here, as well as subsequent conversations I've had with her, that they work pretty much with any resident who is in need of these loans. But the 0 and 2% are primarily for year-round residents. Non-year-round residents or rental properties, they can still apply to the Aqua Fund, which would be, you know, they would not necessarily apply for this, but they would be able to get a higher percentage rate through the Aqua Fund for assistance.
Okay, so you have to make under $100,000 to qualify for these two loans?
No. That's for the 0%. Any amount over that.
For the two?
For 2 or higher percent. I think it goes up to 5% is the highest percentage for the Aqua Fund loans, which is, again, separate from this program, but that is what we're using approval for, either a 0% or 2% loan as part of a major piece of your eligibility for this program.
Do we know how much of the population of the residents that this will apply to and who are actually going to be eligible for these Aqua Funds and the grants?
I don't think we do. You know, we proceeded with this on the recommendation of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee because they have heard over time from folks that, you know, there are some property owners in town for whom the mandated sewer connection is a very significant cost, and I'd like to give them some help. So, but I don't think there's been any survey, or to my knowledge. We won't know until people start applying. I don't know how many people in Chatham are in the Aqua Fund, which is a loan program.
I believe, I know I did ask, and I have it written down somewhere. I want to say it was around 60 maybe in Chatham, I recall.
60?
60, I think.
We can get that information.
We can get that information, and I can confirm that. But I know Orleans, their grant program, they only had 10 applicants to their grant program in Orleans, which was a similar setup to what we're proposing for Chatham.
And theirs was a one-shot deal.
Theirs
because
was a
they happen to
one-shot
have
deal.
some money available.
Yes.
We're anticipating this is going to be ongoing, right? We'll put it in the budget every year.
Yes, our town meeting funded $50,000 from free cash at this recent town meeting as the starter of the program.
Or we can get that in.
So I guess, my question was, is how many people are actually going to benefit, you know, from this? And then I am aware of some of the costs, like $1,500 to $2,000 over the engineering.
It's not a whole lot of money, I acknowledge that. We'll have to see how this works, and, you know, if it's successful, if there's a greater need, I think we're open to considering going back to town meeting for the next budget cycle or thereafter and asking for more money, and we could adjust these numbers upward.
Okay, I mean, I know we got this new economic committee, or it's not new, but you guys just kind of got it running. I didn't know if it was possible to maybe bounce some ideas off of them to see if they come up with some alternatives to this.
That's certainly something I think that committee could do. I don't know if they've organized it. Shireen, did you have something you wanted?
I just had a question, but I'm not.
Okay. But that's something that you know, when that committee meets, you could certainly go and talk with them.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to further that, so that this grant program augments the Aqua Fund program, which could provide a substantial amount of money. We felt in talking to the Aqua Fund administrator that this helped people with the engineering or the preliminary engineering that was needed for the connections, which they could have it funded through the Aqua Fund.
The Aqua Fund provides 100% reimbursement. I mean, it's a loan, but
It is, but
Whatever
if
the-
there were additional costs or they wanted to, my understanding was a lot of what they're seeing at the Aqua Fund is a need to reserve your engineering services with the down payment. And this is what this would help, this was kind of thought as what would be used to help with that down payment if awarded.
So, okay, so you need to get the loan?
You do.
The loan can't count towards the engineering that you need first?
The loan can, but if for whatever reason you need extra, something comes up that is a little bit more than what you initially put in for the loan, this would be able to help offset.
All right, I think I've asked enough questions, thanks.
okay, thank you, Brian. Shereen?
Just internally, when we receive the application or the certification that, the Aqua Fund loan has gone through and all that, who signs off on it from the town's perspective?
I would expect that to be the town manager.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any other public comment. Okay. So Jeff has moved approval. I think it's been seconded, I believe. So we'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. So we now have this policy in place, approved tonight. Thank you. Next is a discussion of potential fines and rates for unmetered irrigation use of town water. This was a select board agenda item request by Mr. Dykens, followed by myself. We will accept public comment on this item. Let me just introduce it, and then I'm going to turn to Jeff for any comments he might have. I've had significant conversations with the town manager about this. You will recall that at our last meeting, we raised significantly the water rates in town, effective July 1, because we wanted to go into this fiscal year without being in deficit. And we had a very sophisticated presentation supporting those rate increases. But there is a category of noncompliance with respect to irrigation, people that are on public water. As you know, you cannot put in an irrigation system today on public water, but there is still about 1,600 people that we know of that are on irrigation, and they're supposed to have a separate meter, and they are billed a separate charge, which is higher than the regular usage charge for treated water in the house. And they're supposed to register, and they're supposed to put in a meter. And the town holds the meters until they're installed. And there are only about, I'm going to say 700 or 800 who have actually registered and put in the meter, and there are another 700 or 800 who have registered, but for whatever reason have not installed the meter. In some cases, it may be quite legitimate that they have been unable to get a plumbing contractor to do this work. But overall, and I'll be very blunt, I think we have a number of scofflaws, and it's not just scofflaws to me, they're freeloaders. They're benefiting on the backs of every other ratepayer in this town. So with that in mind, it occurred to me, and I think to others on this board, that we ought to have a system of implementing our authority to impose fines so as to incentivize folks to install this meter, and also to consider a separate rate for this category, which may be harder to implement in terms of timeliness. We have to determine what it is. We had some conversation about this last time. So with that in mind, we've asked town council to be present, and he's online, and we can go into some discussion and conversation about what we should do. I think we should focus on fines. Mr. Faley has indicated at our recent meeting that the intent is to send a letter to the 700 plus folks that we know about that don't have the separate meter, and advise them that we're going to start fining them. And the way the regulations read now is that after the first violation, there's a warning. After the second violation, there's a $100 fine. After the third violation, there is a $200 fine. And after the fourth violation, there's a disconnection. But I don't know how you can disconnect if they don't have the meter. So I think there's some revision that's needed there or an alternative, some additional language for a second category. And it occurred to me that what you might do, and maybe others will feel differently, first violation, a warning. Second violation, I would bump it up to $200, and it's at $200 per day. Each violation each day is a separate violation, and you keep that going for 2 weeks or a month or whatever, and then it goes up to $300, which is the highest we can fine under the statute. But I'm sorry, I want to come down hard on this because this really bothers me. And then there are folks out there who aren't registered. We don't know how many there are who are using public water for irrigation. Hopefully it's a small number, but I don't know. So I throw all that out for discussion, and I'm going to turn to you, Jeff, because you were very keen on this last week.
No, I think we did a great job, I think, with the change in the water rates, but we left, this hanging chat out there, and we need to deal with it because it is, a chink in the armor. These folks are not paying what they should be paying. In fact, they're not acknowledging that they're using, they're not metering town water they're using for irrigation. They ought to be. So I don't have any issue with getting more strict on the fines, as you just described, Mr. Chairman. What I'm concerned about is really how do we identify these people? How do we know we have a discrete set of folks that are using town water for irrigation, should have a meter, and have not got one installed, number one. Number two, how about those folks that have town irrigation that have never registered? So I think we have two different buckets of issues here, to be honest with you. And the folks that have town water that have never registered, I think, we should come down equally as hard if we can identify them. And the folks that have irrigation that we know about, a system that we know about that are using town water that have not picked up a meter, I think that's this way. My pea brain, we have two different issues here, both of which are, getting away with much lower rates for the water.
Thank you. Rob, did you want to address any of this? And feel free to qualify anything I've said.
Yeah, no, I think it was very well said from both of you, so I don't really have much more to add other than we have 803 households with registered irrigation meters, separate meters, out of the total roughly 1,500 registered irrigation systems. So there are 700 or so that that don't have a second meter. They're paying a lower rate to irrigate their lawn, and it is on the backs of the people that are paying the higher rate for irrigation meters. Right now we're tied to the regulations in the water rules and regulations, and that's why we're here to discuss, what kind of increases that the board is comfortable with. We're working on the language with town council on what those letters should look like, so we're still revising drafts of that.
Okay. I would just, before I turn to other board members, I just want to add this comment, two comments. If someone is legitimately trying to get this meter connected, I think we should show some leniency. And they're having difficulty getting a plumbing contractor to do it. That's one thing, and they should be shown some leniency. With respect to the process for changing the fines, or we're going to have to do something because you can't disconnect a meter that isn't there as the final straw, which is in the current regs. My thinking is that we would, and we're not required to do this, but if we're going to make changes to the regulations, I think we should have a public hearing. I think we should get a recommendation from the Water and Sewer Committee. I think we're initially thinking of doing this, implementing new fines or fines on the 22nd of July, but in conversation with the town manager, I think we're now talking about the first meeting in August. So that gives us a little bit of time. The Water and Sewer Committee is meeting on the 14th of July. They could come in with a recommendation, but my thought would be that the board would say, this is what we're planning to do. This is our proposal. What do you think of it, Water and Sewer Committee, rather than having a recommendation back from them on something else? And we can, we can advertise the public hearing, and that gives us about a month to do it. So anyway, I throw it open for a board comment. Shireen?
Well, Dean, I think this is a really strong statement you've made here, and I truly, you know my feeling about irrigation systems,
Yeah.
as they go anyway, generally.
Senior lawns, Shireen.
Yes, I have a pretty cool lawn. It's natural plantings and indigenous native plants. Anyway, I think that this path is a good direction to us to make these as recommendations to the water and sewer, and then to have the public hearing. I think the process is spot on. And, you know, we're doing something about it, which is what we really wanted to do. So I really, I like the idea of being strong with the fee structure. It sends a message. The idea that there is some flexibility around, you know, intent
Yeah.
is fair. So I'm good with what you had recommended, Dean, and Jeff.
Thank you. Any other comment? Corey?
No, I'm fully supportive of going forward with this. I mean, you could look back at the earlier history. We talked about, you know, people who were using irrigation on the town system. A lot of people jumped off and put their own wells in. It really actually was the best thing to do, because you really don't want to be treating your lawn with treated water. So, you know, that made sense. But now we're talking about penalizing people who did the right thing, or asked, you know, put the second meter on, or what have you. And people who, you know, are feeling the pinch from this are those who did the right thing. That's wrong. So we need to address this. We have some list of named or properties that have registered and don't have the second meter yet. So we have identified. And hopefully over time, we can kind of capture and get a better idea of those who have just avoided this registration period and who are operating without us officially knowing about them. So in due time, I'm sure it'll come out. So there's a maximum fine allowance that we can work with. Let's go to the max. Let's be very serious about it. But I do also agree, if there are legitimate circumstances behind some of these delays, if a property owner truly is struggling with trying to get it done and is in good faith attempting to move forward, we can be lenient and work with them, not be so hard-handed, but we are serious about this. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Stuart?
I guess, if we're talking about raising fines from $200 to $300, because that's the maximum under the statute, as you correctly point out, I'm not sure that's getting serious about anything, because it's not meaningless, but unless we're going to actually enforce this, I don't think we're accomplishing much.
I would agree with you that the better, the more effective approach would be to have a different rate for these people. So they get the water bill, and it says instead of paying the ordinary rate that we're all paying for household use, they're paying something more. But we're not ready for that yet, right? Because town council has advised that the Water and Sewer Committee has suggested charging them the same rate that you're charging the metered, the people have complied. Town council said you can't do that you have to somehow be able to extrapolate from their whole bill how much they're using, how much water they're using for their irrigation. That is some sort of a mathematical exercise. And then you have to come up with a charge that is something less than 100%. I might be saying it incorrectly. Jay or Rob, can you address that point? But before you do, short of that, what tool do we have? And you're right, $300 isn't much. I wanted to go $500. But if you make it a per diem, then it really runs up. Now, how do you enforce it? How do you enforce it?
Well, it's $200 per day.
Yeah.
Today, and we're not doing anything. Has anybody written a citation?
Not yet, not to my knowledge.
I believe it's $200 every 7 days currently.
Well, the local regulation, well, we can change that because the statute allows for every day.
Yes.
Yes.
And you could make it each day.
Well, yeah.
$200 a day.
Right. So, I mean, okay. The statute allows for $300 per day. The regulations are much more, I saw that, were much more restrictive on $200 every 7 days.
Yeah.
I don't know why, I don't know why that was done, or when it was done,
2008, I think.
2008.
Am I right?
But it doesn't matter. It could be $500 because we haven't written a citation in
Well, there are
forever.
some people who just blow off any fine. They
Right.
park downtown and they'll pay the $50 fine to park. They don't care, it's, but I guess the enforcement mechanism is if you send, first you issue a citation, or the police department issues a citation, or maybe the DPW is authorized, and then, and if it's ignored, then the town goes to
Court,
civil
Orleans
court.
District Court, yeah.
And if you start doing that with some people, I think people will take notice. I mean, all I'm saying is, right now, I think it's the best tool available that we have, that's all. Your points, your questions are well taken.
What have we done, I don't know how long you've been here, Rob, but what have we done in the last 5 years? Because it looks like the 5 years was when we initiated this.
He hasn't been here 5 years.
I've been here a little over 2, and
Oh.
no fines have been issued.
Okay, Jill, what have we done in the last 5 years for an enforcement standpoint on these non-compliant folks?
I don't know. I would say probably no fines have been issued.
And we still don't know maybe half of the people who haven't registered with us or metered separately? Is that?
We know
know
the
that?
ones that have registered. We know the 700 plus that have registered but haven't installed their meters.
Okay.
We know who they are, property by property. What we don't know is a legacy of people who are out there with irrigation systems that never registered. Now, I don't know how many that would be,
I believe it would just be a handful.
yeah, because,
If it was close to 100, I'd be very surprised.
I mean, that would imply that, if it were a lot, it would imply that the irrigation installers are not coming to the Board of Health and getting the permitting. Maybe years ago they could do that, so I don't know how many.
I think they could.
Probably could. That's going to require, that's like phase 2. I would think that it would require some inspection work on the part of the town staff.
Yeah.
To go out and see who's got they see an irrigation system functioning. Do they have a private well? We don't know, we know they're not registered with us, so what's going on there? But they think that's the only way you're going to be able to find out who they are, and then you have to come up with a plan to deal with it. Corey, I'm sorry, Stuart, did you have more?
Well, yeah, I have, but I don't know where to, I mean, one thought to get I'm really disappointed that we have all these folks that, and I'm sure you folks are, that have complied. And there's all these people that have not, and we've done nothing, almost. And I think that needs to be rectified. We can play with the fines and the regulations, but I don't know, I mean, you could, I suppose, the town could put a list of those people in the newspaper, of those people who have complied, and say thank you for complying.
That's a nicer way of doing it than putting the list of the delinquents.
Well, you don't know that whole list.
Well, we do know,
but
we do know.
We know the sum.
It's like we publish people that haven't paid their taxes.
Yeah, I mean, well, for the people who we do know who haven't, you mean the ones who haven't had them installed?
Yeah.
How long has that been taking place? Do we
Well,
know that?
when did the separate metering requirement is a relatively recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
21?
21, I think.
Okay.
Not positive, but that's what.
I think you're right. and
You probably could get an installer in 4 years.
I'm not going to argue with you. Of course, we had COVID too, but
If I may add, out of those 700, 150 have applied for a second meter. They just haven't installed them yet. And some of those go back many years.
Many years.
I think 10 is the longest one.
So, yeah, I mean, well, I guess that's where I'm headed is, okay, for those folks, they've applied, and what are we doing now to rectify that? Another $100, whether it's a day, that's not going to solve the problem. So, I guess I'm still asking is, what are we doing today with the existing rules and the existing authorities to rectify that.
Well, the existing reg has a flaw in it, because the ultimate penalty, if you don't, is disconnect your
Well,
meter.
Right, but there's
If
two.
they don't have a meter, you're not gonna.
No, there's two steps before that, right?
I know.
Yeah,
You
so
could- You could fine them, right,
But we're not
give them a
even-
warning, then you fine them $100, and what's the second one?
$200.
So.
But we
that's it.
haven't done that.
We haven't done that, no. And I think the reason why this has risen to the fore is because of the rate increase.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've
I
had
will
to.
tell you this, Stuart, because I've been the water and sewer liaison for 10 years. In 2018, we raised rates. We had a consultant, and the board considered it several times, kept sending it back to the Water and Sewer Committee. And for the first time, the Water and Sewer Committee recommended a separate charge, a higher charge for irrigation. That was the first time we did it. So we've been trying to do something. We haven't obviously done enough. And now we're raising rates significantly, and the reaction of the ordinary person is, fine, it's not great that I have to pay these higher rates.
Because someone isn't.
But these folks, Corey and I ran into somebody today who has a meter and is paying, is in compliant, and it said, hey, we need to do something about these other folks. So that's what we're trying to do tonight, but.
Well, I'm just saying, starting like tomorrow?
Yeah.
You could start doing something.
Well, you could, but I think if we're going to revamp things, we should probably, if we're going to revamp the schedule of fines, we should probably get that in place. That would be my suggestion, because we could do that fairly quickly this summer. But, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we have had this opportunity for years. We can do it tomorrow.
Okay.
And we can start working. Nothing moves quickly in government, so I'm concerned that this thing is, we're going to be.
I intend to see that this is adopted this summer. So is he.
I'm glad.
She'll get done.
Okay, well, then we have to actually make sure that it gets followed up on and implemented.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm not convinced at all that that's going to happen, because it hasn't happened in years.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to make the comment that I think the process you described is a good one. I understand your impatience. I think this has risen to the top, to the top of the pile as a priority in terms of our water utilization and how we deal with our public, but it's clearly unfair, and so I would remand it to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee for their recommendation, having them hearing this discussion, knowing that we want to get more stringent with respect to fines, and if you want to make a recommendation,
Do you
what we
want
think about it.
do you want to give them our proposal, or do you want them to come back with a proposal to us?
I prefer that they go at our direction on
Okay.
this, because we've been, with the recommendation to come back.
Corey?
Question, can we get the Board of Health involved in this? Because if you have an irrigation system connected to the town sewer, you have to have an annual backflow device inspection. It's a $25 fee or something like that, but I mean.
$75.
$75 fee, okay. Would the Board of Health be added to the mix, have any, a little more strength? I mean, there's a data. Well, I do know several years ago, there was a guy walking around from the town, either from the town or representing the town, doing data collection. Are you on the town system, not on the town system? Do you have
Yeah,
backflow
they were,
device?
there was a survey.
Yeah.
I remember filling it out.
3-4 years ago. So, I mean,
Most of the backflow inspections are done through our staff.
okay. I mean, is there
Veolia.
any way to tie that into a little more of a process?
Well, let me, I had thrown a question to Jay Telemann earlier about a separate rate, and maybe he can address that as well as Corey's question, or anything else. Jay?
So on the separate rate issue, we look at rates as under a different set of laws. The law regarding rates relates to the fees necessary to offset the municipal cost in administering the service. So if we're going to do a split rate, there has to be a connection to a different set of services that would increase the cost of managing that service. I think it is always possible to consider that when we're setting rates, including for this. But I think we have to put analysis into that. If we are going to split that rate, we should come up with something as a reason why. So I'm not going to say, and we wouldn't say that it's impossible. What we would say is we need a reason, and we could work with Rob and whoever else as to why a rate for irrigation might involve a separate administrative cost or of monitoring or management or otherwise that necessitates a higher rate. Otherwise, I did want to add, and this is somewhat in response to Stuart's question, and this is also in the draft letter that we prepared for Rob, we are not confined strictly to fines of $300 a day, which can add up. And we do have some experience in Chatham of collecting a fine of tens of thousands of dollars. We did this quite a while ago, but we can do that, not for this kind of violation, but for a different one. We have the right, independent of the fines, to seek equitable relief in the Superior Court and get an order of the court to have someone connect a meter. So that's possible. There's an expense associated with that, but we could group a few of those and think about that. And that carries a pretty large stick because it gets the court involved. Court is expensive, and it would constitute a judgment against a party. And it would be a pretty easy case to prevail on, assuming the facts reveal that there is an illicit irrigation connection where a second meter hasn't been connected or established. So those are kind of a couple of thoughts on a couple issues that have been put out there. And I'm not, what was Corey's question again?
Board of Health.
I mean, the Board of Health could pass a regulation of their own and has some enforcement ability, whether it's a regulation or not, preferably under a regulation that regulates irrigation wells. A number of the towns we represent approach irrigation wells from a Board of Health perspective. A Board of Health can charge a higher amount for penalties in the event of a violation of a regulation. They're slightly more difficult to collect, but they could do up to $1,000 a day. If we do that, we have to tie it to a public health thing, which I think we could for an irrigation well and water supply and everything else like that. But there is some authority to do some of this under the Board of Health. Here, we already have an existing vehicle in the water department regulations that already addresses this issue. So it's kind of a natural to patch it up. But the Board of Health does have jurisdiction as well if they choose to exercise it.
Okay, well, I see one citizen online, so I'm going to throw it open for public comment, as I said I would. So Elaine Gibbs, I guess that's you.
Yes, thank you very much. I would disagree that there are only a handful of people who haven't registered, that they're out there, but we don't know about them. I think the numbers could be significantly higher. And I would hope that you could put in there that for those people who are doing this, and we don't know it, that they have X number of days and that the fines will be retroactive. We had asked them kindly to let us know if they had that, and of course nobody did. And that's been going on for 2 or 3 years. So I would hope those are the people that really need to be penalized. And if you can make that retroactive and say, and the further is, as town council just said, there could be significant litigation. And I would agree with Stuart to put their names in the newspaper. The second thing is, I think that it's a red herring to say that people can't get connections, that they're on wait lists. I've got people on my street that are having work done, and I see Dubis, all kinds of people out there doing connections, upgrading their systems or whatever. And this is all new. This is something that they have decided to do within the last 6 months to a year. So I don't think people have been waiting for 2 or 3 years to get connected. That's just not true. So I would hope that you really get serious about this, and the people that are really abusing the system. Again, some numbers have been thrown around that there could be, 3 times as many people who have not notified the town and that are just doing it illegally. So I would hope that there are penalties that would be retroactive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Any other public comment? Yes, please come forward. Identify yourself.
Hi, Hannah Smith, 29 North Road. My question, and I could be completely wrong about this, but new construction in town, obviously not supposed to connect to town water for irrigation. But it seems if you go off of Massachusetts, their public list online, over the past 2.5, 3 years, there's been about 64 homes that have had new wells constructed on their properties. If you go through that list since about from the end of 2022 to now, only 3 of those homes out of the 64 were new construction. Obviously, as we know, there's been a lot of other homes that have been, say, Eastward companies bought a property, built a home, sold it, or someone hired Eastward companies like on Shore Road to build a property, and then they've just moved in. How come, I don't know if it's something being backlogged, but why are those homes not showing up on the well, like on the well permit list for Massachusetts? Because there's some that are listed as recent as 2 weeks ago. But then no, all the new construction homes that clearly have sprinklers going and irrigation and beautiful green lawns, they're not on the well list at all. And wouldn't that be where they would have to be?
I don't know how that works. Maybe, Rob, do you have any comment on that? I mean, obviously, if you have a private well, you're not subject to these regulations. You can.
Right. I don't know if the Board of Health keeps a record of new well installations.
I assume they must.
But it would have to be registered with the state as well.
Yeah, so Massachusetts. The list online, it seems to be updated until now. It goes until, the last one was June 21st, I think, was the last home in Chatham.
This is a state list?
Yeah, this is a state list. You can select Chatham, you can scroll down through, you can search by dates or by well number. I guess it's just, I know that they don't have to follow the same, but it's listed, it'll show if it's an irrigation or a monitored well. Since you're a new home, so say like new construction, if a home was finished early 2025, they couldn't connect to town water for their irrigation system. So the only other way to connect is by well. But then why are they not listed on the well?
I don't know the answer. Have you checked with our local Board of Health by chance?
No. I called today asking for a list from the water department just to double check it, but I do have a list of the ones from about 2022 until now, and it was only 1 house on Cedar Street, 1 house on Captain's Walk, and 1 house on Capri Lane. Those are the 3 new construction over the past 2.5 years that have a well.
This is at the DPW.
Yes. Well,
They get
I
the-
called asking for it. They haven't gotten back to me yet. This is publicly available online.
Okay. So the Board of Health is the body that issues the permit to dig the well, right? Rob?
That's correct, yes.
Now, is that information shared with the DPW?
It is, yep.
So I don't know what, they haven't gotten back to you, so I don't know what they have on record there. But I understand you're checking the state.
Yeah, so I guess it's just concerning because we've
Sure.
obviously had a lot of homes that have been completed over the past, and this
Sure.
is only going back 2.5 years. If you go back until this started January of 2021.
I suspect our municipal records are probably up to date. Now, how they are shared with the state, I don't know. We can certainly get that information and make it available.
It seems that they're pretty, they're pretty good about it because, the home that was literally just posted for sale, that was
Yeah.
just finished building, that's the one that was, the permit was submitted and shown on the Massachusetts website on June 16th. So that's kind of what I used to gauge it. It's just a little concerning that there's only been 3 new homes. And if you go around, all of these homes are ranging from $2 million to $10 million. And to believe that, when I went around just looking at a couple of them, I really only saw one that you could say probably maybe he's going around putting his own sprinklers out, moving them. The other ones, there's no way those haven't been.
Yeah, we don't unfortunately have an answer to your question, but I think, Rob, can your department look into that and get back to
Yeah, there was no verification that they had pre-existing irrigation meter on there. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, this would be like entirely new
Okay, brand new
construction, so they would have to have the well, right, if I'm understanding that correctly? Yeah.
Correct. Yep. Okay.
And I mean,
We'll try to.
Unless somebody's doing something illegally and they're connecting.
We'll try to get an answer to you through our staff.
I also want to add, they're just actually, the Hunter Rise, that road down by Harding's Beach.
Yes.
They have probably 10 new homes in there. There's only 4 of them that have been completed as of January 2021. So then they would fall under that regulation. But the other, it's just all 10 of them. None of them have a well on that road at all. And if you go down there, it's very obvious that there's irrigation systems. So I just find that pretty
Again, I
interesting.
don't know. I suspect if you went to I suspect our Board of Health probably has that information, and the state doesn't have it up to date. I don't know. Bruce, did you have something on this? I'm going to ask Mr. Bogatis. He's the Vice Chair of the Water and Sewer Committee. I know he's done a lot of research on these issues.
Good evening.
Just on this point, Bruce.
Bruce Bogatis, Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. I'd like to reinforce what was said earlier, and that is there was a significant water rate increase that was put through, and the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee was concerned that the increase had to be so much, partially because people weren't paying their fair share, and unless something gets done, we had to project the higher rates because people would continue to be scofflaws. I did a lot of research on trying to match up some databases in the town that aren't linked. The Board of Health has a well application database, and they do a good job of identifying whether it is for potable water or is the well for irrigation. Their database has 1,141 permits, and they list the status of those permits, whether it's complete or open. And of the 1,141, 586 are complete. They said, and some of these applications are 20 years old. The Board of Health states that they do not follow up, that it's supposed to be the installer of the well or the homeowner that's supposed to come back to them, but they have no follow-up mechanism at this point in time. I got into that database to try to see if some of the people that had applied for or had registered for an irrigation system, maybe they changed their mind and installed a well, and that's how they got their irrigation resolved. I did a match of well addresses and the names between the databases of DPW and the Board of Health, and there were only 4 properties that possibly could have been a conversion from an irrigation permit to a well, private well. But most of those were more than 15, 3 of those were more than 15 years old. So I don't think any of them are going to be resolved by that. So we still have the full issue of the 685 people that we know that have made a request for an irrigation permit and have not resolved it. So that's the piece that I think we can get at and should get at right away. And the second piece is to try to identify the people that have irrigation that never made an application request.
Thank you.
All right, any more public comment? Yes.
Ryan Phillips, 374 Orleans Road. So this is, I guess, just clear, I just have questions, kind of. Hannah? So was it that people are registering, like they have for a well and then attaching their irrigations up to the town water? Is that?
No, I didn't. I think what I heard her say is that there is a state database that shows who has installed a well for irrigation in the town of Chatham. And that's showing fewer properties than a visible inspection around town would lead one to think. Is that a fair summary of what you said? You have to come to the podium.
It was referring to, just as an example to show the new construction, it was just kind of like picking almost like a control group to show. So literally going from knowing that this was taking effect January 1st, 2021, looking at homes that were completed between then and now, and then taking those homes and actually looking, because they had to be connected to a well, they couldn't be connected to town water for their irrigation systems that they obviously have. I mean, you drive by, you can see sprinklers going. And it was clear that in that time frame, there was only a handful of properties that were on that list that were new construction. All the other wells that were completed during that time frame were not new construction. They were existing homes. People decided to put wells in. So there's clearly, you know, to say in the past 2.5 years, we've only had 3 homes, 3 new homes that have wells. Doesn't add up.
Okay, again, to summarize, I think I summarized it correctly, that you've got what you're calling a control group database information on the state website shows fewer installations of wells than you would expect by your visible inspection.
Yeah, for new homes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all. It's a little bit off the point of what we're talking about, but I'm happy to entertain it.
I mean,
Because we're
I
talking
feel
about-
like it's very valid just because this is about irrigation in town and people complying, not complying.
Yes.
And I would consider new construction, especially from, you know, some of the builders that have built these homes
Yeah.
that have bought the
Well, but
land and
when-
then sold them. They are reputable builders in town, so it's kind of concerning that those aren't
Yeah.
showing up as having.
Again, I don't know what the reason for the discrepancy is. We'll try to get that found out for you. But what we're looking at is people that have registered or not registered for irrigation use of town water and how to correct that problem. We're not really looking at, you know, who's installed a well or not.
Right, but I guess the question is like, if there's no well on this property and they have an irrigation system, where's the water coming from?
Because these homes are after
Sounds like the-
2021, which is why
I
it was.
suspect if you go to the Board of Health, their records are gonna show that these people have well permits. That's what I think you're gonna find. You haven't gotten that information back yet, I understand that.
No,
but
because I asked if it was public record, so I'm just
mean-
waiting to hear back. But I do think,
All you have to do is drive around town with all these constructions, you can see the derricks installing wells over the last several years. Am
I don't think we have that capability of knowing it. She is bringing up a legitimate concern, and I think we should, you know, take it up as an issue that we need to address. I understand tonight we're talking about this. I appreciate the due diligence you've done on this, and you've raised a question that we need an answer to. So I would hope that the Board of Health, the Health Division, it will provide that information, and if it doesn't, please call the town manager, and she'll see that the information becomes available. But I think it's something that we should be looking at as well, to make sure that we're not seeing some sort of underlying issue going on where people are sidestepping, and there's no, if there's an issue of the Health Division not being able to follow up to make sure that there's wells installed. I know this is off topic a little, Dean, but I think it's valid, and I want to validate Hannah's due diligence here. that this is something we need to take care of.
That's fine. When we
Okay.
get that, when you get that information, when we find that information, if it leads to us as at a future meeting to put this on the agenda, we can talk about it. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what the reason is, why there's a discrepancy. You found a discrepancy in a certain number of instances, and I'm just saying my own visible observation of the town of Chatham and construction going on in the last several years is I think a lot of people are putting wells in, and it's just not showing up on the state database for whatever reason. So, but thank you for bringing it. I don't know, is there anything else you want to say? I don't want to shut it off. Stuart. Brian, go ahead.
Is there what is the punishment for illegally hooking up a watering system?
Well,
a new one. That's
You can't tie a new irrigation system to town water today. You cannot do it.
right, but what's the
Cannot do it
punishment?
since 21.
I guess I'm just wondering, is there a punishment for someone that does that?
if it's,
Implemented.
well,
We have
there is the fine
We
system.
have fines.
Right now. If that were ascertained that somebody had done that, they would get a warning, they would get a $100 fine for the second offense and $200 fine for the third offense.
And this is
And then a disconnection.
And this is for installing an irrigation system after the certain date where it'd be illegal?
I'm sorry?
Because you can't install irrigation systems on the town water anymore.
That's right, but if
So-
someone illegally did that,
You do the fine thing and,
first of all, they'd have to get a plumber or a
I get you. a plumber.
well, they'd have to get a plumber who's doing something illegal because they'd have to go to the town and get a permit to install it. They can't do it. The plumber would have to say, I can't do it,
Okay,
okay?
All right.
But if they got someone who was,
all right.
doesn't care about compliance, and it was discovered, then the town could implement the fines that are under the current regulation. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
all right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Richard Creeth, 1934 Main Street. I wasn't intending to say anything about this, but just as a point of information, I live in a house that's about 18 months old. It has an irrigation well, and I just checked, it's not in the state database. So that would kind of suggest, Mr. Chairman, that, something's wrong with it.
Yeah, there's some communication.
There's one
issue.
other thing that I have to say. As part of my business, we used a technique called predictive analytics. And if you took the consumption data by property and analyzed it, taking into account number of bedrooms, full-time, year-round usage or not, you would very easily identify people who had extremely high water usage. It's extremely likely there would be a strong correlation between them and people who have irrigation that's going through the main well.
I think that's a point that he's actually been looking at, but thank you, Mr. Creek. Rob?
Rob wrote it in his memo, in fact.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the comments, because he's absolutely right. And we are working on still scrubbing our database to make sure we get that, but we're looking at approximately 78% of usage for a household with a separate meter is for irrigation, and then only 22% is for household use. So it would spike. We'd be able to correlate that information. We're still scrubbing our data, so we'll get there hopefully sometime in the next couple of months.
Okay. And no more public comments? Okay, thank you. Thanks to everyone that did speak. Let me bring it back to the board, and I don't know that we have consensus around anything, but I want to modify something I said earlier. If there is an inclination to change the regulation to increase the fines and make them a per diem fine, and then what I would suggest, rather than our trying to craft the language tonight, we asked town council, working with Mr. Faley, to come up with some language and then present that to us at our next meeting, which is the
22nd.
22nd. Hopefully that would be a very short agenda item, And then we would instruct staff to put the publication notice in the newspaper. It has to be published twice. It has to be published once in 2 separate weeks. Schedule a public hearing for it at an appropriate time. But in the meantime, refer that recommendation to the Water and Sewer Committee for their comment back to us. So instead of being able to do this on, at our first meeting in August, it might be deferred to the, what's the schedule for August meetings, Kathy? do you know
August
that?
6th, and
So it wouldn't be August 6th.
It would be, it wouldn't be August 5th, it would be August 19th.
Okay, so presumably if Jay could draft something up consistent with what you've heard tonight, Jay, from us, and we would take a look at that language on July 22nd, right?
yes.
And then, okay, yes,
Just
sir.
in terms of process, just for clarity, Jay working with Rob is great, but I think they also ought to work with the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee now, rather than having them come up with something, we draft it, get it back to them. I think it would be more efficient
Okay.
to have them work together and we get something fast.
Well, they're meeting on the 14th.
Well, I don't know if they'll get it done by the 14th, but I think that's more, ultimately, a bit more efficient.
Yeah, I think that you're right. But they can, there's an agenda already posted, but I think the chair and the vice chair can squeeze this in. And is that doable, Rob? Okay, and Jay, this is doable?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Now, I just want to say, as far as the other suggestions, what do you, and I hear you, Stuart, we've got a regulation in place now, we could start finding. I'd rather step back, get this new system in place, get a letter out to everybody, so it's not as a surprise to people that don't watch the select board meetings, and then start implementing under the new system. And then as far as the group that, the amorphous group that's out there, you know, maybe they're people that have been observed operating irrigation systems, and maybe they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing, they're not registered with us. I'd rather leave that as the next phase to deal with, because that's going to be a little harder to deal with. We've got something handy. Anyway, you were going to say something, Stuart.
Well, that's fine. It's just, why would that be a little harder to deal with?
Well, I think we're going to have to physically inspect property by property. We're going to have to take a look at, we're going to have to go around town and determine who has irrigation systems. And then you're going to have to, let's say there are 2,000 irrigation systems in town, on 2,000 properties. Then you're going to have to subtract from that the people we know that are registered and have a separate meter, and the people we know that are registered and don't have the meter, and the people we know that have wells.
Right. And the only thing, and I'm fine with
Yeah.
your course, if you
Okay,
want to
thank you.
step back, that's fine. My only point is, for years, we've had this opportunity. We have it today, and we'll have it tomorrow. If we want to start pursuing this, the operational end of this town can do that.
I appreciate
They
that.
have the authority, they've got the means.
I hear
Okay,
what you're saying.
thank you.
Okay. All right, so I don't know if we need to take a vote. We have consensus to ask town council, working with Mr. Faley and with the Water and Sewer Committee, to draft some language and come back to us consistent with our conversations, okay? We'll do that, and as far as the questions about the databases between the state and the town, hopefully we can get some staff clarification on that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have several committee appointments, and a number of people have been interviewed, but I will take the first one, we'll take them one by one, appointments and reappointments. The first is the Barnstable County Home Consortium Advisory Council, and Gloria McPherson, our Housing and Sustainability Director, currently is a member of this council. I'm not sure what the council does. I was going to ask the town manager to tell us that. But the program manager for the county council has asked that we reappoint Ms. McPherson to a 3-year term. So can I just ask, what does the council do? Obviously, they work in the housing area, but,
They do, and it's a consortium of all of the 15 Cape towns as well as the county. I don't know, I wasn't prepared for this question to answer.
Oh, that's all
it, so
right. I don't
wanna-
need anything.
But Gloria, we've always had a member, a representative from Chatham serving. It's been Gloria McPherson. Prior to her, it was Ally, our former town planner. So this
Okay.
is a reappointment for
Okay.
a Chatham representative.
there is a draft motion, would someone like to offer a motion?
I'll do that. I move to appoint Gloria McPherson to the Barnstable County Home Consortium Advisory Council through July 31st, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded, so I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The next body is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. So we have three positions that are up for consideration. I'm putting aside the vacancy we have right now that was filled by a select board member. That's not what we're talking about. We're basically talking about two of them are at-large positions. One has to be filled under the town bylaw by a representative from the Community Housing Partnership. So I'm going to try to take these one by one, and I'm going to start with that position, the Community Housing Partnership, currently occupied by Carolyn McClelland. She is the representative, and the Community Housing Partnership has communicated to us a recommendation to reappoint Carolyn McClelland. That's correct, right? So, and we're not limited to Carolyn. We can take anybody, I think, from there, but that's what we have. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Metters, sorry.
No,
You can be chairman,
I
too.
will be happy to say I move to reappoint Carolyn McClellan as the Chatham Community Housing Partnership representative to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees until June 30, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any other candidates for that? Okay. I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Now we have two at-large positions. They're currently occupied by David Oppenheim and Jonathan Avery, both of whom were interviewed. We have also interviewed Katie Shearer, Dr. Louis Hybe. We interviewed two other candidates that applied for multiple committees today, Richard Creeth and Brian Phillips. So I'd like to take these positions one by one. So I'll put it forward for nominees for the
Mr. Chair?
first position. Yes.
I move to appoint Jonathan Avery as a member at large on the Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees until June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
And that's been moved and seconded. Any other nominees for this particular position? Stuart, did you have something you wanted to say? Do you have a nomination?
Yeah, I'm trying to follow your, I'd like to nominate Louis Hybe.
Is there a second for Dr. Hybe for this position? I'll second it. So we have two nominees for this particular position. Any other nominations? Okay, so I will call the roll. Please name the person that you vote for, either Dr. Hybe or Jonathan Avery. Ms. Davis.
Jonathan Avery.
Mr. Dykens.
Jonathan Avery.
Mr. Metters.
Jonathan Avery.
Mr. Smith.
Louis Hybe.
And the chair votes Jonathan Avery. So Jonathan Avery is reappointed I guess we should have a formal motion for the term. I'll offer
I
it.
move to appoint Jonathan Avery as a member at large in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees till June 30, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
I'll second that. So I'll call the roll on that. Ms. Davis,
Jonathan Avery.
you just have to say aye. Right?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
No.
And the chair votes aye, so 4-1. So Jonathan Avery is appointed. So the third and final position that is open on that board is currently occupied by Mr. Oppenheim. And there are other names who have applied, as I've mentioned, and been interviewed. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to make a nomination.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Louis Hybe.
Dr. Hybe has been nominated for
Second that
this
one.
position.
I'd like to appoint David Oppenheim.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Yes, Corey second.
Okay.
With Dr. Hyde.
And Shereen?
David Oppenheim.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any other nominations for this position? So we have 2 nominations, and we'll call the roll on the appointment, on the vote on this position as between Dr. Hybe and Mr. Oppenheim. Ms. Davis?
David Oppenheim.
Mr. Dykens?
David Oppenheim.
Mr. Metters?
Louis Hybe.
Mr. Smith?
Dr. Hybe.
The chair votes present. So that's a vote, that's not an abstention. So no one has a majority. Neither nominee got 3 votes.
Mr. Chair,
So we'll take another round of nominations.
I move to appoint Katie Scherer to the, as a member at large of the Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees until June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or successor is appointed.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any other?
Mr. Chair, I move to appoint David Oppenheim as a member at large in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees until June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or successor is appointed.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
Okay.
2 nominations for this.
I'll nominate Louis Hybe.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
3 nominations. Mr. Oppenheim, Dr. Hybe, and Katie Scherer. Any others? Okay. We'll call the roll on this. Ms. Davis.
David Oppenheim.
Mr. Dykens.
David Oppenheim.
Mr. Metters.
Dr. Hybe.
Mr. Smith.
Dr. Hybe.
Chair votes present.
Well, I accomplished a lot.
I think from my votes, you know which way I'm going. I would prefer to keep this position vacant until we get other applicants. But anyway, I'll throw it open again, and for as long as you want to take votes.
Honestly, Dean, I don't think it's going to change. I think you know where we're coming from, so I assume that this is a continuation, and we'll see what other applicants we get. I mean, I don't believe we're going to change, I'm not going to change my vote or my nominations. So, yeah, I can tell. So I think we move on and tack it another night. Just my suggestion.
That's fine. Any other comments? Yeah, I'm not comfortable with voting for any of the current applicants. Okay, so we have a vacancy, and we have other candidates, Kathy, that have applied for this position?
At this time, you've completed all applications for the Affordable Housing Trust.
So this position will remain showing as open on the town website, and if anyone is interested in applying. And the bylaws talk about having, the current bylaw talks about having the board populated by, including consideration, including folks that have, people that have experience or education or experience in real estate development, as it says. The new bylaw adds in housing, interest in housing. Okay. All right, that takes care of the Affordable Housing Trust. The next is the Zoning Board of Appeals. We've interviewed, there are a number of current incumbents who have applied for reappointment: Randy Potash, Lee Hovey, Ed Acton, and Steve DeBoer. Though they were all interviewed, David Nixon was also applied. As I mentioned during the interviewing session this afternoon, he was to have been scheduled for an interview, but that fell through the cracks, and I am proposing that he be considered for appointment notwithstanding that. So there are 2 draft motions that staff has prepared. Does someone want to offer a motion relative to Ms. Potash and Mr. Nixon, who are regular board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Randy Potash and David Nixon as members of the Zoning Board of Appeals until June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Okay. I'll call the roll on that. I assume there are no other candidates. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Ed Acton, Steve DeBur, and Lee Hovey as associate members of the Zoning Board of Appeals until June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next is the Airport Commission. We have 3 vacancies, I believe, and we have 2 candidates that have expressed, well, one has been interviewed for the Airport Commission, Dr. Alfred Tria, and Mr. Phillips, and I don't know if anyone else expressed for the airport.
There is one more I'm trying to schedule
We
for
haven't.
one of the other vacancies
Yeah.
as well.
So we have 2 potential candidates for the Airport Commission, so I'll accept nominations on this one.
I'll nominate Brian Phillips.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, are there any other nominations? I will nominate Dr. Tria. Is there a second?
For which term are we nominating? Because there's
Maybe
2.
a couple openings.
Well, let's take the longer term first, the 2028. Or is that, we should back up on that. So that's a good point. Let's take the shorter term first, 2026. So is your nomination for that, Stuart, or for Brian Phillips on that one, or?
Well, no, I was hoping for the longer.
Okay, well, then let's go with the longer one first, then.
Okay.
And I nominated Dr. Tria, but I haven't heard a second for that, so. This is the Airport Commission. All right, so we have 1 nomination, it's Brian Phillips for the Airport Commission till 2028. We'll take a roll call on that. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes no. It's 4-1. Brian is appointed. We have a second position till 2028, till 2026. I'm sorry, thank you. Are there any nominations?
I move to appoint Alfred Tria to the Airport Commission through June 30th, 2026, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Is there a second?
Aye. I second.
Okay. Any other nominations for that position? Okay. Call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So Dr. Tria is appointed and to that. Historical Commission,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Are you ready for us to nominate, or are you going to?
I was just going to explain that we have 2 regular members, well, there are 3 regular members, Stephanie Hamilton and Bob Lear. I think we waived the interview for Ms. Hamilton, right?
Yes, I could not coordinate it before the deadline. so
Yes, and the board was circulated with that information. Mr. Lear was interviewed tonight. Sandy Porter is a current member, full member, but she wishes to be appointed as an alternate member. So now I will entertain nominations for the full positions.
Mr. Chair, I move to reappoint Bob Lear and Stephanie Hamilton to the Historic Commission through June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or successor is appointed.
Second.
Okay, call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The next is there a motion, is there a motion on Sandy Porter?
Yes, I move to reappoint Sandy Porter as an alternate member of the Historical Commission through June 30, 2026, unless sooner revoked or successor is appointed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, so I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next is the Conservation Commission. And on this one, we have Eric Hilbert. He's an incumbent. Again, we're waiving the interview. We had difficulty scheduling that one too, and the board was polled on whether they wanted to have an interview or not. So we're going to waive that. And is there a motion on Mr. Hilbert?
Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Eric Hilbert to the Conservation Commission through June 30th, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second. I'll call the roll. Well, I will say, you can, I know we just appointed Brian Phillips to the Airport Commission. He could serve on the Conservation Commission if he wanted to do both. He's got his thumbs up. He's not prohibited, I don't think, because the Airport Commission is not a regulatory body. You can't serve on two regulatory bodies. Is there any interest in nominating him and burdening him with this additional responsibility? No, I hear none. Did you have something, Corey? Okay. So I'll call the roll on Eric Hilbert. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And lastly, the Traffic Safety Committee and the Open Space Committee, we have two candidates. Did we waive interviews on these as well? Or did we?
No,
interview them?
as I was cleaning up the list, I noticed I inadvertently had left them off of the slate of candidates. Neither of these committees had new members. They should have been included in the slate that was considered on June 10th, and this was just kind of.
They were not required to be interviewed.
They are not required to be
Because
interviewed.
those are
They're
advisory.
advisory committees and-
Okay, so one is Alan Mark Zayan for the Traffic Safety Committee and George W. Cooper for the Open Space Committee. He's been on there a long time. I'll ask for motion on the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee first.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Ellen Mark Zion to the Traffic Advisory Committee through June 30, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And next on
Yes, I
open
move to-
space.
I move to reappoint George W. Cooper to the Open Space Committee through June 30, 2028, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second. I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That completes the list for tonight. Where do we stand going forward, Kathy, on committee appointments? Because we've got most of them out of the way.
Almost all, the only one that's remaining at this time that I'm aware of, and I'm going to go back through again, but Community Preservation Committee, we're waiting on, now that everyone's been reappointed, certain committees need to recommend their representatives, so that one is still pending, but should be coming soon. And then everyone from here on out are interviews for vacant seats. So you'll still have interviews, but they're for vacant seats, new applicants for consideration.
I just want to clarify something. On the Affordable Housing Trust, we have now a second vacancy. Mr. Oppenheim was the incumbent, but he was not reappointed tonight, so I think that constitutes, am I correct? I think that constitutes a vacancy.
Can I get clarification? Does he still remain on the committee?
Well, that's what I'm saying no, but
I would say,
Unless, the motion is unless sooner revoked, and I don't know that you voted to revoke it, you just, or successor is appointed and no successor was appointed, and no motion was made to revoke his appointment.
well, I'm going to move for reconsideration of that position on the Airport Commission tonight. Because what did I say?
You said airport.
I'm sorry.
You said airport.
The Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees. I move to reconsider that vote. Is there a second to reconsider? I'm prepared to change my vote from present to a particular individual.
Fine, I'll second.
Okay. I'll take a vote on reconsideration. Ms. Davis?
no.
Mr. Dykens?
No.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So that position is open. Are there any nominations for the position currently held by Mr. Oppenheim? Mr. Smith?
Dr. Hyde.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there another nominee?
David Oppenheim.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Any other nominations? I'll call the roll. Please indicate whom you vote for. Ms. Davis?
Mr. Oppenheim?
Mr. Dykens?
David Oppenheim.
Mr. Metters?
Dr. Hyde.
Mr. Smith?
Dr. Hyde.
Chair votes Dr. Hyde. So that position is filled with Dr. Hyde. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Ms. Davis,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 7:45 PM. Thank you.